modern.
I
Mine?
could just pause here. What
Yeah,
we talking
yeah,
about? We talking about modern men,
Hold
yeah,
on.
yeah,
even.
yeah. We are
We
talking about
are.
modern men.
We'll
So
get to
Okay,
it.
so I was just sorry. I was just saying I could see how it went into religion because as I was in the bathroom
Oh Lord.
showering, I thought to myself,
Jesus
a
Christ.
lot of a lot of the traditional marriages where there are traditional rules still in a home, like very staunch, strict traditional rules, are typically very religious or follow a religious pattern. Amish, Mormon.
Hey,
Um,
you got the gold star for the segue of the century just now.
so
Yeah,
what?
that was the seg. You wrote that in very skillfully. I love it. Let's go.
uh,
So
uh,
yeah, so I was thinking that like most of this the constructs of a marriage, it depends on what they subscribe to. So if you are a Christian, Christians have morphed into very open people. So they actually have some of the most non-traditional marriages where you have like Seven-Day Adventists. They still have a lot more restrictions on their how they perceive their Christianity. Of course, Muslims, Lord, Lord knows if you're a part of the Israelite church, God be with you. Um, like so literally how your role in your marriage is sometimes almost always if it's a very deep seated religion, then of course it would be traditional because and it will be following the pattern of the Bible that he is speaking of or whichever Bible that they are reading. Other than that, I think for most relationships the lines are very blurred. um you don't have I mean, not many. I know Kevin says he has a dictatorship in his home, but he still has talked to Felicia like she's a person. I know some religion, one religious guy was like, I always say to people like a trooper him and you better than me. Like she decided to marry a guy who was a staunch, I won't call it religion because I don't want to go, I don't want no one coming for me. But she, at one point she was sitting in the back seat and I was like, "Babe, what? How does have to do with?" She's like, "He's the leader, so only him sits in the front." She basically is a child. She's one of the other. She's one of the children, and but she's the one who washes and does all the housey duties and take care of the kids. So, and I don't know if that's traditional or that's slavery. I don't know. So, and again, that's blurry too to me.
That's just weird.
right. I
That's
mean,
weird.
Yeah.
on the religious side of that, I mean it, and this would be another topic for another day. I would beg the question: why was it you're afraid to mention said religion? You know,
Because
it's
they a
easy.
little aggressive
Yeah, but
on the
I'm just
right.
saying. But it's you see certain things where people are afraid to say things about one thing but not about the other. As we talking about the Jews, it's not just the Jews; it's the Muslims, so on and so forth. But to say like talking about tradition, I looked up what is a traditional man. And it says a traditional man is someone who adheres to age-old cultural principles of gender roles. He believes a man rules the home and should be the sole provider while the woman takes care of the children and home affairs. He is usually a man who takes pride in his work, strength, and ability to protect.
How old is that
I
definition?
always
Huh?
yeah. Go ahead.
How old is that definition?
Um, this
Because
is
we're devils
this is
and
from the hernorm.com.
Right.
They talking about dating the old-fashioned guy is
I
uh
actually think it would probably be a rather new definition, but a refreshed definition.
mhm,
Because now that the context, the conversation is robust about the traditional versus non-traditional or modern or whatever, I think
right.
that there's revision to try to craft that. And that's something for me that I always, again, I put in context because I am a weekend historian, right? And I always try to make sure that we're understanding, even when we use a word like traditional, when we start to define things and say, people would say traditionally males are dominant and the woman is subject in the home, or she is secondary, or she's a help. That's not necessarily everybody's tradition. And if we're defining a timeline in terms of what we're calling traditional, it's very much more responsible. And so if we're talking about traditional in the sense of Western society in terms of the new world, meaning the last, 500 years, then that conversation has its particular context.
I'd agree because I was in Africa for only 2 weeks. So I am no expert on African, but the woman really ran the household over there. The man, yes, he provided, he hunted, but when he brought the hunt back home, and he basically turned everything that he had over to her, and she saw it fit that the family was taken care of. So she really took I think you mentioned this last week, Wayne, how those old African societies were based on around the woman. So I guess so. Yeah, I think but Wayne is on something in terms of the timeline, but I wouldn't call it timeline. Again, I would say Anglo, and any religion that comes from an Anglo or a version of that, that's what tradition would be. Like the man is the head all the
that's the context of the time, because from a historical point of view, you have westernized culture that spread across the globe and that dominates the globe since the 15th century. So
the rise of the church, the Crusaders.
So all of that happens at the same time. So that's
Correct.
why it's roughly in that time frame.
I agree with that.
I think certain traits hold true regardless of where you are in the world, regardless of the time frame. A man being a protector and a fighter, a woman being patient or a nurturer. I think those things hold true regardless of the time or the part of the world that you're in.
I mean, as you just said, Mary, you said like in the African cultures, like the woman she took care of the household, but that's what is seen as a traditional woman. They take care of the household. The man in that situation still went out and did the hunting. I mean, that's more real hunting because he actually going out to get food in some of the African countries.
But she also set the place and where he felt where he filled in society. So you typically would try and marry a woman who was richer than you to move up. So here, I think I saw someone who was like how, oh Lord, I hate to say this, but he was like how most men, God forgive me as a woman, marry down.
Marry down.
Because women looking for someone to provide for them because they some of them just aren't smart enough, aren't capable of doing it themselves. And then he said black women, he said most women, like most women say, he's saying like non-minority women marry the men, whoever they marry up. And black women tend to marry down because they grew up hearing black men ain't shit, ABCD is about this, you have to be a strong black woman. And so they try to fill in the gap of the man, and then they make themselves masculine. And so you'll see, and I think the interviewer guy, she must have watched the same thing. He asks them, why do you think that is? And the guy's response was, white women teach their daughters to be submissive because they've already married up. They don't even bother to try figure some things out. Whereas in the black community, because of, and again, this is recent, like Wayne said, the gap in terms of all of our men are going to prison, they're locked up, the woman is left in the household, and she then teaches her daughters to take care of themselves and take care of everybody else around you. So yeah, I watched that, and I really didn't want to say that, but I think that's a strong point too. Yeah, so
I have an issue with that because when it said that women marry up and men marry down, I think you're trying to look at it from the same framework. When they say women marry up, it's usually in a financial aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And when you apply that same logic, you use that same logic to men. But the thing is men, generally speaking, it seems as if that women are looking for stability and security. So therefore, they are looking for somebody who makes more money, right? But on the man side, a man doesn't, generally speaking, doesn't care about what a woman makes.
Mhm.
So if he doesn't care about what a woman makes, it doesn't matter her financial status, because it don't matter to him. So therefore, he, even if you look at it strictly from a financial standpoint, you could say that he's dating down or marrying down, when really what is his gauge is different from a woman's gauge. So he could be marrying up in his eyes, where she's marrying up in her eyes, because it's two different metrics.
And I will segue back into our original topic. Remember last week I ended with, these dudes are not marrying for love. They're marrying for help. So at one time, look at Gavin. Gavin, remember this hat?
Yeah, was
I-
like, oh, here we go.
Because he literally, I preached this in the office like all day. And guess what? I don't blame men anymore, because guess what? It's a contract. What is she bringing to the table, right? And I understand he's saying not just financial. So I'm not, it's more than financial. But if she bring in debt, poor money management skills, a history of whatever in her family, man, I don't blame a dude for being like, you know what? I out. I don't care how submissive she is.
But you
If
know
she's
what, Mary, the reason why I think you have that type of perspective is because your lens is actually a bit
Rose
skewed
colored,
modern. And
rose
so
tinted.
you actually, there's a conversation that is somewhere in the middle of this, where when we talk about, okay, what is a modern man, what is a modern woman, there's an evolution that's happening where people are evolving and being redefined as time goes along. And that's where I think the idea of, we talk about it like renegotiating the marriage contract or renegotiating the relationship contract, what it actually means. And that hits on the topic of the actual roles when we talk about it. Because I do think, and back to what Kev was talking about any time, any place, there are some things that make a man a man. I think if you start to put that on a percentage scale and you say biologically, right? Biologically, a man is bigger, a man is stronger, he's going to go out and hunt, he's going to do these things. So that's something. So, but when you look at 100%, let's say that biology part is 20%, and that runs throughout the scope of time. That's one thing. But there's a lot of cultural implications that go beyond that. There's a lot of evolutionary implications that goes beyond that are defined by the practical elements of the culture.
I would agree with that. And back to men marrying for help. Creating a team, I can understand some people looking at creating a team is marrying for help, right? You want to be equally yoked in a sense to what you both can do, whether it's one person do financially and the other person, do something that's non-financial, take care of the house, take care of the kids, whatever the case is, whether it's a man or a woman, right? But like Dito had said earlier, it doesn't have to be financial. It doesn't have to be financial help, right? That could be emotional support, right? That could be for you to encourage or to you to help push the goals. That it's not only financial. A lot of women say, "Oh, well, I'm marrying up." Okay, like Dito also said, once you marrying up in your mind, you say, I got to marry someone that's making more money or can handle certain things. But for us and for me, personally speaking, for me, marrying somebody that makes more money is as an afterthought. For me, I'm looking for more of that emotional support in the background, that you handling what I can't, right? You picking up
Big
the slack
question
where I
may
can't,
want
right?
to you may want to put it, but I just want you to add on, Kev. Could you, for me, define what is emotional support? When you finish what you're doing, define what emotional support looks like for you as a man.
Hey, Wayne,
After
your
you
mic
finish
trip
what you're
out
saying.
again too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I could jump right into that because I was about done with that. But emotional support for me, I tend to get a bit aggressive and a bit headstrong with a lot of situations, right? Sometimes I need someone to dumb things down, to put certain things in perspective to me and say, hey, you can do things X, Y, and Z. You could water this down and it still could work, right? Me, I tend to go gun ho with whatever I'm doing at that point in time. I tend to get tunnel vision, right? So for me to sit there and think, I have to do this now, this needs to work now, but to have someone in the background and say, hey, you could take 2 steps back, we could space this, so we could spread this out over a period of time, we could still get this done, right? It's not, when I say emotional support, I don't mean, oh my God, I'm gonna have a mental breakdown, or you know, I have anxiety, and I know why you asked that, right? So when I say emotional support, any emotions involved in doing anything for me, if I tend to get too overboard, I would like somebody to be, hey, reel it back a bit. Let's try and approach this way or that way. Because with me, I tend to move completely on logic, right? But most females, sometimes they move a lot on emotion, but that emotion can be very, very helpful to certain people. And it is for me at some points in life. So that's why I say, having somebody that's in the background, giving you a bit of that emotional support, giving you a bit
Definitely in the
of
background though, not the foreground, definitely the background.
well, in my view, definitely the background.
Okay.
I don't think that's what she was alluding to when she said that men marry for help though. Like, because I mean, obviously, it's nothing wrong with wanting equal partnership, wanting someone who is perfectly capable as you are to get things done when things need to be done. I personally believe that what the phrase defines is somebody who is not where you are, but they still would want to be with you, still want to engage you, still pursue you because they see that you are capable of getting them where they need to be.
Um,
But that's the same thing. That's not only financial though.
No,
uh,
wait, no, I'm
No,
talking
it's
about
not.
like this dude wouldn't have been able, like how you saying she's supporting your dreams or you don't need the financial help. These dudes need the financial help as well. Their
Yes.
last
Yes.
name ain't nobody. So
So
they
let's
I
gonna
say
go
mean, so the
marry.
question, the question is this though. When you say these dudes, and I'm not denying what it is you say, who are these dudes?
Men,
Men.
guys,
are
people.
they traditional men or are they modern men?
Well, can you define that for me? Because I've gotten a little bit of definition on what
They
traditional
definitely
what a
wouldn't be
traditional
traditional.
man means. But what is a modern man by your definition?
My definition, I'm not sure what the world defined as modern man, but I look as a
Mhm.
modern man as these men who are seeking to try to bring about quote unquote equality. I mean, you just said having an equal partner. I think that's snake oil because I don't think a relationship is an equal partnership in the sense that it's being said an equal partnership. Somebody always has to lead. Steve Jobs was the leader and he had two other partners, same thing with Bill Gates. Um, so I think that they are trying to again cater to the modern women, which is the Miss Independent. Hey, I could get this money all by myself. I don't need no man. That they tried to get in. They are trying to cater to that mentality. That's what I think a modern man is.
So would you say, Dino, then that a relationship could not work between a modern, well, a traditional man and a Miss Independent, as you put it?
Not without her being submissive to him. That's why we have marriages in the Western world and 50% in divorce.
How does
That's
independency
because they lying.
determine how does independency determine submissiveness?
How does it determine submissiveness?
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm saying she has to be submissive to him in order for that particular relationship to work. If she's
I
going
see
if she's
I see
going
relationships like that
yeah,
thrive, man, when the dude asks him, so he say, I am helpless. I need your last name to survive. He come to her on bended knees and say, and so their marriage is not a marriage. That is a real life contract. You want this. You want
Yeah,
to
but
stop being single.
marriage always ever was a contract.
No.
Contract.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
But like this now is like a business deal. This is
it always was.
It always
that's
was.
the
I trying to have
origination
one of them
marriage.
right now, Mary. Like I could use a good business deal right now. Let me tell
like,
you.
listen, your last name makes sense. You making this money, this little bub. I trying to get to your where you
Hold
at.
on, hold on. Hold on. You have a man out there taking woman last name?
No,
Oh,
But
because I'm
they-
trying to understand what you're saying right there. You say your last name makes sense, and you're talking about men. So I'm trying to understand.
you have the right connections. You could put me in a room. Your last name gets us in the room. You may take my last name, but your last name gets us in the room. Your last name gets us a seat. Your daddy is
that.
called to make the loan.
I get
thing
that, but
happen.
I honestly don't believe that that's like even a reaching majority of men. Like
No, it
that
isn't.
has to be an absolute minority.
I
Here's the
think
thing,
that
though,
gotta be
what is-
way less than 1%. Yeah.
So every modern man, there's a different variation of a modern man y'all are talking about. There's no complete definition of this of a singular modern man. Each
I
modern
agree,
man.
Mary.
So there
And
might
they
be
all
a
have
1%
different traits.
thing.
Yeah,
We
but
went on-
I would say this. What Mary is alluding to, I think may be an extreme example. However, the concept of what she is saying though,
That's
it's
not bad.
actually something that is a weird byproduct of feminism, in the sense that men see when all of our constructs, we have constructs built on top of constructs, of course, that's how society flows,
Like
right?
Jenga.
But exactly. But when it all boils down to it, everything has to start off with nature. Everything has to start off with biology. And so at the bare bones of a relationship is the pursuit in a carnal way, whether that's through pleasure or through procreation. And at that very base level, the first step is the man having to pursue the woman. And because of that, there's always a level that is innate of a man having knowledge of his woman or women in general and adapting to what he needs to do to acquire the woman, to get the woman. And so what I've observed is that this weird twist in feminism is that while you are trying to escalate the equality narrative and the strong and the independent narrative, the flip side of that is that there are men who have to find their way into the crevices of acquiring a woman. And they will end up they will evolve into whatever is said to be needed or felt to be needed to get the woman. And the problem is this, there's a fundamental problem that women don't naturally want that type of man. But when it is spoken to and when it is within this societal concept of what's going on now, that's the type of man that presents, who is the man that says, okay, you're right. She does work over here, and her daddy is the VP over here, and I could get a job. And if I know her, you do have a man that's actually thinking like that, because now you've created this playing field where his traits as a man and his ability to conquer or his ability to navigate life based on his format and programming is not what's really valued. It's just the end game.
So, so to go with what you're saying, Wayne, what I think is these quote unquote modern men, and the reason I'm gonna put that in quotes is because I think majority of men are still traditional. The difference is that, again, byproduct of feminism, like you said, Wayne, is that men in general play with what's there. Whatever cards are dealt to them, they're going to play them as they see fit, and they're going to do what's best for them to achieve their goal. So in this modern era, with modern women having these different standards, men are going to adapt to that to get what they want. It may not be the woman that it is they want. It may be, like you said, Mary, some of the access that she has. It just may be to sleep with her. But whatever it is, he will adapt just to get his end goal. But his end goal in those situations is not the woman. So in those circumstances, I don't think that falls into like the whole relationship dynamic, because it's, I want this for my life, so I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to get to this point.
So you don't consider that construct a relationship, a real relationship. You consider that what? Just
Generally
someone.
generally speaking, but there are anomalies. That I'm not going to say it. There's no relationship out there like that doesn't work, because there are exceptions to every rule. So I will say that there are some, but it's, as Dakota said, a very small minority.
I don't think that two things that you said there. For one, if I just go anecdotally, I don't think that I would be convinced that the majority of men are traditional at this point. And that's just me basing it on, if I meet 50 men a day, how those men present themselves. I don't think that at this point it's mostly traditional. I think I would say that there's probably a mix of traditional, some toxic remnant of tradition, and then there's modern. And for me, that modern and that toxic remnant of tradition, they are definitely together at least 80%.
Okay, so
Okay, but the toxic traits is, I need to clarify. Toxic traits are.
hold on. With that being said, so my question is because I mean, I read this definition off, but what are we going to then classify as a modern man? In order so we could have better clarification as to.
I could just throw my, for me, I would definitely just throw in things like a modern man is a person that feels that he should have equal opportunity to walk through the door, because he is an individual, and that woman is an individual. He's standing in a line at the bank, and he's not going to let a lady go in front of him because he doesn't believe, because she is an individual. So I would think that that reflects on a person that adopts this concept that men and women are equal, and as a result, they want to, and when I say equal, men and women are the same. I shouldn't use the word equal. Men and women are the same, and as a result, their worldview is reconstructed to treat a woman as though she is a man with a vagina.
Personally, I just think dudes like that just don't like women. And I don't mean the other kind of dudes that don't like women. I mean, like, they don't like women. Like, they hate women.
I don't think so. I always want to have that part of the conversation, because Black women in particular always seem to jump to this thing where they talking about,
wow.
oh, you was a sissy. You was a sissy.
See, that's, I don't mean. That's
what I don't mean.
Of course, when we say that, we don't even technically mean gay people, but I mean, when it comes to that, there's always this aspect of where you just hate women, or you just, I don't think that's it. Because when I talk to younger guys, especially, and I ask them about situations like holding the door open for someone or whatever, I get a very genuine look in their eyes of saying, well, we equal, right? And so it's not even a thought process to them to say, why would they do that? It's like, yeah, but that's where the whole thing is headed.
So that's a slippery slope, though.
Yeah, that's
it kind of is.
I think it becomes a cycle of single mothers raising
I
young
was
men,
just gonna bring that
young
up.
men, then
I was
have
gonna bring that
children
up.
and not be fathers because they don't know how to be a father. They don't know what it is to be a father. And then cycle continues. Another single mother raising a son that
I
he
agree.
doesn't know how to teach how to be a man.
I
So
see a
here's
lot of
the
that.
thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Here's the thing, right? If at this point, I think that the modern man is just kind of mirroring the modern woman, right? Obviously, a modern woman wants to play both roles, right? But the modern man is gonna say, okay, you want to play both roles, then go for it, right? So a lot of things the traditional man would do, like they brought up chivalry, it's out the door now because hey, you can do whatever we can do, so just move forward and handle it like a man would. So I feel like a modern man is literally just mirroring a modern woman. Just taking traits from, hey, I can play both roles as well, and
I don't know.
that's that. Go ahead.
I don't know. Maybe I'm traditional, but I just think it's like common courtesy and common decency. Like I hold doors open for people all the time, male, female, children, old people. Like
Yeah,
it does not matter.
that's
Like I
fine, but you're
just
not.
feel like it's common decency.
Yeah, but you're
But
not gonna hold the door open for somebody every time someone walks through a
no,
door, right? So
I kind of
it.
do.
I
I
mean,
think
if I go ahead and then yeah, me too, Dread. I ain't gonna lie. If I go
I
into a
kind of
store
do.
and I
Like if there is
walk in
someone
before
behind me,
and
I'm
me, I'm
holding the
like,
door.
yeah.
here you
But
go, lady. Yeah, I do that too.
with that
Or who you
with
go,
that being
man.
said, Dakota, I think this would also fall into the modern man is modern versus traditional is that if you're holding the door open and a man just walks through the door, again, generally speaking, I would probably classify that man as a modern man, whereas a traditional man would probably hold the door from you and allow you to go in first.
Well, I get that most times. I would
Right.
tell you, I usually
Right.
get if I hold the door open, and a guy is coming in behind me, he will hold the door open and say, "No, you go first." But I've also encountered
Ditto.
one or two of those guys that don't like women, in public spaces. So
But then with that as well, right? You have a lot of situations where people get fed up with it as well because you would hold the door for somebody, they would walk
yeah,
in,
and
they'd
then
look
they'd
at
be
you,
rude
same
and don't
face,
even say thank you,
same
right?
face, and walk right in, right? Exactly,
Yeah.
and that happens a lot. So nine
Yeah, I
times out of
can't
ten,
though.
if that happens to that person 10 times in a day, that 11th time it might be a rude awakening, right? So it's a give and take. But that is a give and take. Modern men, they are marrying modern women. It's a give and take.
I don't think I don't know. I just from my own personal perspective, I don't think I maybe
I consider
it
my
does
dad a
it
modern
doesn't
man,
feel
but
familiar to
traditional.
me
I don't know.
because I don't really think I could classify myself as a modern woman.
Hmm.
I think I definitely am in the gray area of more traditional.
But
But
isn't
yeah,
that like a
well,
version of modern?
but you having
Like,
manners and respect for someone else. I would kind of hold it as more traditional than modern anyway, in any regards, right?
Yeah,
We
so
were
are
we were
we getting?
obviously raised a bit different.
yeah.
Are we gonna get into the classification like how we do gender, where you like semi, demi, quasi for your
Yeah, we
level
Mm,
of more? Because here's the thing, right? I grew up in a house where my dad held the door open for us. He fixed everything. But on the flip side, Naomi wasn't the best cook, so he cooked. Naomi was better at finances, so she did the money thing. Um, my dad is to iron my uniform. My dad was a tailor, so he sewed clothes and dresses and stuff. But my mommy only did the sweeping and the mopping and the taking care of the household, that kind of way. She dealt with the maid or whomever. So, and when people speak of my father, they use the word he was such a traditional man. But if you look at what people conceive or perceive as a traditional man, he wouldn't be per se. And I think I then evolved into this semi-traditional woman because I say I don't want me and you can't. I told Kevin, me and you can't be running from the frog. So am
So
I
Mary,
dating people?
who
Okay,
who married up in that situation with your parents?
they were supposed to get out.
Who married up?
Who's the smarter one? I
No, I mean,
think
who married up? Not only in
Married up.
terms of finances, like what we said earlier.
no,
Not
no,
only in
no.
terms of
I
Who's the
telling you right
smarter
now.
one? What's going on the internet, you know, miss?
My father's deceased, so he can't route.
So yeah, so
Not
your movie
even
is the
voice.
default-
He
your
coming
movie is the
high you.
default answer.
No, I'm not forced answer. I would say I don't think either of them married up. I think it was really a collaboration because they both knew they came from nothing, and they saw certain traits that they both could piggyback on to get to the next step. Like you have to understand, my mother come from she's a parent, like she is the quintessential definition of what come from a single mother is. Like her mother had her when she was 15. They grew up in Baintown. My Grammy baby daddy was 38. So it was a lot of factors going on. But she went to private school. She went to university. So there you go. But my
So did your dad
father,
go to university?
no. My father came from, however, my father came from a one mother, one father, 12 children, 12 children in a house. They cook every Sunday they meet. They had family.
Was he the eldest child?
No, he was the fourth or the fifth.
Okay.
He was
And that's
like
where
the
he
fourth.
learned responsibility from.
Yeah, so he's like the fourth or the fifth. And then my mother was like one of like 38 from her father's side, and then one of six,
That's definitely a different.
One of how much?
38
38.
that they know of.
38.
No, man, I know someone who have like 42. Like they just
Yeah, that's the
granddad
time. That's the times. You know, indirect polygamy. We don't want to call it what it is, but you know,
Let's call it what it is, Wayne.
they are concubines, man.
yeah. So he was a Rolling Stone. My grandfather was a Rolling Stone. And so like I think they both saw that both of their childhoods and both of their lives weren't perfect. But they both knew that they wanted better. And maybe that's a set of the times too. That's when Black men and Black women were saying, we trying to break the cycle, we trying to move out the hood, we putting together our resources, we moving up to the east side or whatever, and we're gonna break the cycle with making sure that we could produce nuclear families. So yeah, so I grew up and I think my father I think he's a low-key modern dude, but he was very traditional.
But why was it? Why are you saying he is modern? What is it that he did that makes you think that he is low-key modern?
He took care of the household with her. She did not. She wasn't in charge of the household by herself. He had household chores as well. He cooked. He did all ironing. He was the only person who ever picked me up and dropped me to school.
But I think that happened back in the day. Like
no, you just said traditional men
Mhm.
provided. They brought the moolah home and the woman took care of the house.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
For the most part, she took care of the house. Like taking care of the house, majority of it was her responsibility. Not saying that he did nothing in the house. Not saying that he came home from work, sat down, put his feet on the coffee table, and watched TV all the time.
You never read the book they had published sometime in the 60s to say how to keep a man with you don't ask him how his day was. Make sure he has a drink. Dakota, you ever saw that thing? It was published in one of those, like, I think it was a magazine.
One of those magazines, yeah.
And how to keep your husband happy, and how to be a good submissive wife.
It sounded like a good partnership to me, though.
But I think Mary's premise about her dad is, I think she's basing it on like staunch traditionalism where the husband goes to work, he comes home, he doesn't do housework, the wife cooks, cleans, takes care of the children, does all of the ironing. All the husband does is go to work, come home, make money, provide for the household, and make babies.
Yeah, but historically men cooked. So I mean, if just to talk about cooking, I mean, if you want to say
you just said your own definition. You started this whole conversation off. Yeah. Now I agree with Wayne that feminism changed the whole construct of tradition versus modern, because I would say this, because women went to work. What you described was a woman at home who
Mhm.
could stay home all day and cook and clean. What I described in my household was two people who both went to work from 8 to 5, and whoever reached home first do what needed to be get done. And I
Yeah, but
think
I
that
think
is
what it is, what you alluding to, is one of the fundamental issues within this conversation, I think, though. And it's actually, again, when we go back into history, this is a problem. This is a problem fundamentally that Europeans have had when they observe society, which is that they see actions but don't understand principles. And when you start to look at how it is where you talk about the cooking, the cleaning, the ironing, you're now saying that those things, well, you're not exactly saying that, but what it subscribes to is this ideology that the woman does those things as being in the home, and that's what made her be the woman, and with that goes the submissiveness. And what happened is that when you start to have a crisscross and a mix match of those activities, that's what caused the confusion, because what was then promoted is that, well, if the man doing them things, and it's the woman who go out to work, then it's like the woman is the man, so why should she have to submit? And that's what came along with it. But those are activities, those are actions. They don't really fundamentally have anything to do with the underlying principles of masculinity and femininity. Those are just manifestations that would come about in activities. And if we get to the basic premise of the masculinity and the femininity as principles, I think those things are really unchanging. And that's what's causing the problem now, is that, and most times it's women, but I'm not saying that it's there. I just think that I think that the influence has been steered towards women more with the advent of feminism and the, you know, how far that it's moved. I think that that has shifted so much that it now puts the woman in the position where she's doing these activities, but the underlying principles are in conflict.
I think what you're
great.
calling activities, Wayne, is what we now refer to as gender roles.
Right. And I think that is what really causes the fundamental problem, because you're saying that those things, you're saying that those roles, in a sense, not you, but we are saying that those things are what makes the person be
Like
this.
defining factors,
It
right?
defines it.
A woman or man.
And that's where now the conflict is saying, oh, well, we should negotiate it. The way that I
So
always have looked at it is, I've always looked at the relationship conversation, and I've had to have these conversations over the past 3 or 4 years for, you know, I've had to have them. And when it comes down to it, I always look at the relationship, the marriage, as a vehicle, as a car. There's only one steering wheel. And as a leader, you have the steering wheel. So this idea that there are two leaders or that there are whatever, it comes into question, because when you're in that co-pilot seat, use the US as an example, but you could be driving from Georgia and you could be driving over to Las Vegas, and that co-pilot could say, "Hun, I want to make a stop in Louisiana. I want to stop in Colorado to hail one of my college friends." You could suggest any number of things, but the reality is that there's one person driving. And I think that when you put it in that type of context, when you talk about what the leadership and what the submission context is, I am not 1000% sold at this point that that driver is always going to be a man. Because I think that
That's fair.
it's come so far. But what I do think is that in the context of a relationship, the majority of times it will end up being a man. And the fact that you're not able to recognize who is that driver and who is the passenger, I think is what leads to the issues in many relationships.
Yeah, I would want to say this may be an unpopular opinion for modern women, but I prefer the person in the driver's seat to be a man. Now, I could jump on over there every now and again and do what I need to do, but I appreciate a man who has the capability to lead. Like, I don't want to be the quarterback all the time. Like, I want to be on the bench sometime. Majority of the
I
time.
said from last week.
I want to
I
enjoy the
said
game.
from last week. I think it was Tito who asked me if he told me to leave. Who's who asked? Who posed the question?
Yeah.
But
It
who
was
told me to
Tito.
leave?
It was Tito.
If
It
he
was
said, if you need to leave today and we doing what I doing, shout out Beauty with what I 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
So I'm glad, Wayne. I'm glad you brought that up though, Wayne, because I had written the question down, right? And so that kind of, I can piggyback on that. So like, in terms of from traditional man to modern man, like I was in a conversation last week with someone, and he was insistent that he cannot be in a relationship with a woman that makes more money than him. So is it possible for a man to be in the driver's seat and be the leader? And not from my perspective, from a man's perspective, is it possible for a man to feel like he is capable of being a leader, knowing that his female counterpart makes more money than him? Like, our finances, I mean, finances are important, but
can
when
answer.
it comes to that perspective,
Let me
how
get a
important
mic.
is it?
Who's going first?
I'd say yes.
I will go first.
Go ahead, Tito. I'll follow you.
I will answer yes, and this is strictly from personal experience. For quite a while, my wife made more than me, and I had no problem with it because, to me, what she's doing what she wants. If I feel anyway, I guess what's the word they like to use? Intimidated by it. That's a me problem.
It is. I agree.
Mind you, I also think that in those times and aspects, it motivates me because I don't want my wife to have to do that. So whatever it is, it's going to motivate me. Not because she's making more than me. It's because I don't need her to do that. I don't need her to be stressing herself out, going like stressing herself with work or any of these things. Now, if she wants to do that, that is a completely different story. She wants to go to work, she enjoys what it is she does or whatever, that's fine and dandy. But for me, I'm going to do whatever it is I can in my ability so that I can make sure that we as a family are good, and I will eventually at some point be making more than her. Not because that is my, not because making more than her is my goal. It's just a byproduct of me taking care of my family.
All right.
Me, like I have a, I just, you could add this in to her question. So if she does make for it more than you, whose responsibility is it to take care of the household, since she has the majority of the shareholder in terms of money? So you could continue to answer that question, and then it could be passed on to the other two persons. So
Still
Okay.
hers.
Well, if
Tito
first of
wasn't
all,
finished. He got to finish
To-
that second
to-
part.
to-
It's a whole part.
to,
That's two
to answer
pieces.
that, it's still hers, because if at the end of the day is as a fam, for one, I don't see any purpose in getting married unless you plan to have kids. So if you're going to have kids, then at some point it's going to come where she will have to scale back her duties at work in order to take care of the child, especially in the formative years. So while she's doing that, she is going to be at home, and she's going to have to take on these roles because she'll be home.
I think just to jump on where you at though, Dito, I think you're describing a situation that is very unique in terms of the way that there is the dynamics there, because even the mere fact that you are able to um kind of dictate that, okay, when she has, well, I think now that there is a child involved, now that means she's going to scale back and she's going to be this and she's going to be that.
Mhm.
And
Agreed.
I think that in of itself, along with what you mentioned earlier about this idea in your mind that all you need to do is be motivated, you're going to make more than her one day, you're going to, it
So
it
sorry.
sets a framework. No, it sets a framework that there is not a level of comfort with the woman actually making more than you. The reason that you're able to adapt to it is because really you still feel dominant in the scenario, and by whatever, if there's an agreement or understanding, or you just know that's how she is or whatever, you don't have a reason to, or I should say, she is not bringing along the traits that usually comes with a top earning individual. And that's a very unique, but also a very great situation. But in most instances, the dynamic that comes along with high powered, high earning, particularly career woman, because there's other ways to be rich, but particularly a career woman, there's dynamics that come along with it that would not ever be the way that you're describing them.
Yeah,
No,
because when Dito was like, yeah, so if you ain't make no sense get married if you don't plan to have kids, because when you have kids, you can be home. In my mind, I'm like, dude,
I mean,
definitely
no,
we're
no,
getting
no.
a nanny. We're
no,
getting
no,
a nanny.
no.
let
What
me
I'm saying
piggyback on
is,
that though.
no. What I'm saying, what I meant is that if you as a couple said we don't want to have kids, I don't see a purpose in being married. That's what I meant when I said that. I think the purpose of marriage is to foster another generation. But if that's not a part of your goal, you could
I
just
thought the
shack up.
purpose of marriage was to get a mortgage.
I could get a mortgage by myself.
No, but I mean, clearly, when
but-
you say you think, and Kev, you could jump right in, but when you say you think that it's the purpose of marriage, I mean, clearly
God.
that's just your personal viewpoint.
No,
When it comes down to it, marriage as an institution, as it was formed, has always been a community building business arrangement. That's what it's been. That's what marriage started off as.
and how do you build a community? You need people
No,
for a community.
no. You don't necessarily have to build a community through having children. So the union. I mean, I don't have any children. I'm a community builder. I'm a uncle. I'm a mentor to many. The fact that you do that, you're not constrained to that, because the same way, if you end up you could desire to have children and not have children and still participate in building the community. Yes,
Amen.
the fundamental building block is having a family. But I think to say whether it don't make no sense getting married if you don't plan on having kids, that's kind of different. I mean, that may be your personal view, but I don't think that has anything to do with the institution of marriage itself.
No, I mean it is my personal view, because I mean you can do all of those other things, and I also think marriage has something to do with beliefs as well, religious beliefs in particular.
Sweet.
But to say again, being two people coming together, you could do all of those things if you're not having kids and just stay together, and remove the headache of if it fails later on, that all of the legal ramifications that come with it, right?
Okay.
But to say in terms of what you were saying about, like, I was going to make more because of one, she may not be the type of woman that she may not have the traditional sorry,
No, the modern part.
no, not traditional, that may be a wrong word being on the conversation, but she may not have the type of attitude and type of personality that commonly comes with a woman that makes that kind of money, right? That's a high earner, right? Yes, you're correct. She's not that way. But also, whether I was married or not, I was going to be a provider, because that's who I am. And to say, even if right now, say I made $500,000 and she makes $1 million, I would be fine with it, because I know that at that income level, I will be able to take care of my family. I don't need her. Her money is inconsequential, because I can
Yeah, but
take
the way that you're framing it, though, this is what I'm saying. You're
Mhm.
answering the question, and I think you're answering the question from a good perspective. But I think that the real question lies within the reversal of roles in the way that a woman traditionally, let's say, has had to be comfortable with her man making all the money, whether that's $200,000 a year or whether that's $30,000 a year.
So
Either way, she didn't get to determine, okay, well, I'm comfortable with you making it. It's been that you are to play a role regardless on what those circumstances are.
Okay,
so-
let me give you, if you have been with this woman. Okay, I have a friend, really good friend, super smart. She makes about, I want to say 275K a year. She is in her mid 40s. She's never been able to maintain a relationship because aside from, I don't think she's in, I don't perceive her as intimidating, but I could, again, I'm not a man, so I'm not from, when I dating her, I'm not dating her, you know, I don't know how she comes off as a woman, but I do know she has these requirements of a man, right? And so you can't talk to her this way. She making this kind of money, so certain things aren't up for discussion. She can move like this anyway, blah 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 blah. And I think that's what Wayne is saying. Like, if you were to run into that kind of woman,
She needs to be
oh,
by
that
herself.
was
She needs to be on her. She needs to be on her own. That makes no sense. A relationship is
Yeah.
all about compromise. That
Yeah.
makes no
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and
None.
also in that situation, those same requirements, I would be willing to bet had she met a man making 4 times what she makes, all of those requirements go out the window. He could talk to
Exactly.
her any kind of way that he feel, and she would accept it because again, it's the view of marrying up or getting in a
I think
relationship up. But to ask if this is more of a clarification, Dakota, to go with what Rain said is, are you more asking that can a man be okay not being an earner, period, while his wife is the earner? Like,
No,
well,
that's
let
not.
me
No,
answer that
not
question
only
before
that.
you guys go for it. Right?
go, Kevin.
Go ahead, Kev.
For me personally, if my wife or my partner's making more money than me, and I could take that money and put it in other places and make the family wealth, then that's fine and dandy, right? But at the same time, you don't want to be that person that's doing absolutely nothing,
She
right?
done
That's
smarter than you, bro. That's how
right.
she
That's
making
a
more money than you.
not
Go
not
Wayne.
necessarily, because you can make money down a career. You can make that kind of money down a career path, but she has no idea how to make money outside her career path,
So what
right?
make you
So,
think you magically know how to take her money and make money?
because me personally, I've always made more money outside of my career path than my actual career, right? So I'm speaking personally now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I've
No
always
one
been able
answered Dakota general
to
question
make.
yet, properly,
No,
man.
no.
What's
Uh,
I still answering the first question you
Go ahead,
asked.
Kev. Go ahead.
Come on.
Me, I would have no problem with my partner making more money than me, right? I'm going to be doing things in the background to try and make wealth for the family. Like I said, I've always made more money outside of my career, so I'm pretty sure that it can be done. Now, back to the point where Dido made that if she doesn't want to have kids, it doesn't make sense getting married. That's something that needs to be discussed before the situation, obviously. And if she decides to backtrack on it, then it's a different story. You have every right as a man to say, you know what, this isn't gonna work, and out of the question, we're not gonna make it happen. Now, for a woman to have kids and not want to be a part of that child's early life, to me, it's kind of weird, right? I know Dakota said, we're getting a nanny, yeah, but that for me that comes later on, right? Obviously, you're gonna have to take a step back as a career woman, not fully just ditch your career. You're gonna have to take some steps back to get the child up in the early years, right?
Why do you say you have to do that when the reality is that you have modern career aggressive women that have children and that stay aggressive pursuing their careers every day right now?
They
I
still
think
made sacrifices, man.
No. I'm not
They still
asking.
made
I'm not asking
sacrifices.
about that. No, I'm not asking about that. What I'm saying is that is a reality. That is a reality.
Right.
When you say make sacrifices,
When
like
I say take steps back,
mhm.
I leave
that
aside.
woman is still
You mean like
going to
what?
make
I just leave
certain
aside.
sacrifices. That woman might say, you know what, instead of spending an extra 20 hours at the office during the week, you know what, I'm gonna dial it back. I'm gonna
No,
give
that's not
15
true though.
or
That's
give
what I'm
10.
saying. That's not
Not
true.
every woman does that.
But not
That's more
all
of a woman.
exactly. You saying that's
Not
not
every
true,
woman
but
does.
that's
No,
not all
it's
women
the
do that.
majority.
Some does.
no,
It is
Kevin.
it is
No,
Majority
no,
the
no,
of
no,
women does
majority.
no.
do that.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Not every woman.
Remember now.
Some women,
Remember.
some women forge ahead and say, "F that, not F that
No,
child," but
but
like,
what I'm saying is, remember now,
Okay.
we're not taking a broad scope of all women. You're
Mhm.
already narrowing this down, talking about these super assertive, career-minded, driven women. We're already putting that in with blinders on. And what I'm saying, being me, an individual that has been around that kind of woman all my life, the majority of those type of women are not taking the step back. The
No.
So
majority
have I
of
though.
those type of women who were working the 60, the 70, and the 80 hours, they will continue to the detriment of what you're describing, to the detriment of their family.
Not
Of
all
how
of them.
you're describing. No, we're not
Well,
saying all.
all of them.
What I'm
Yeah,
saying
I agree.
is
Some
that
men do
in
that.
my experience around those type of women, the majority of them continue on. If they was working 80 hours a week, they don't turn into soccer moms. They
Cool.
No.
continue working 80
No,
And
hours a week.
hold on,
but
Mary.
I
Let me
don't
tell
think
you
In
why, though.
in
Let me tell you why. As a
hold
mother,
on,
let me
Mary.
tell you why.
Hold on, Mary. Hold on, Mary. In my experience, like you said, in your experience, and my
Mhm.
experience with women like that, just an extra hour away from the office at home is a sacrifice. And women are willing to do that. I'm not saying they're going to completely ditch their career and become a soccer mom, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
not.
when I get off of
That's
work.
not what I'm saying. That's not what
Right.
I'm saying. But instead of spending an extra 2 hours, somebody say, I can dial this back. I can take an
yeah,
extra hour and then go home and get to my kids.
I
The
think
women
That's
in
why
my life that
Let me
I've dealt with like that,
let me tell
they
you
make
why that woman
sacrifices.
exists,
Women
Wayne.
women
That
always
wo-
make sacrifices for their children,
you know why that woman
regardless of
exists,
what it is.
Wayne? Because we're told we can't have both. You can either have one or the other. So
I don't agree with
that
that.
woman, often we are told we can't. It's very hard to have both, right? So that 80-hour woman who forged on after she the kids immediately get the nanny in, she doesn't want to lose the position that she already has worked so hard to attain at where she is.
Exactly.
And the fact of the matter is, even though Kevin, I don't know if you agree or not, men look at women differently after they have children and with the expectation that they're going to take a step back from their job. And when they do that, they pounce on that position because they've been thinking that she shouldn't get that position long time. So she forges ahead, like you say, at the detriment of the family, blah, blah, blah. Because in her mind, she's worked however such a long to get to this place in her life.
Tell my
Um,
story, Mary.
Mary, you
she's
didn't
like,
take a step back when you had yours?
I told
Well,
on, follow me
go
on
ahead,
my
Mary.
journey.
Go, Mary.
I did say them women. Now,
Okay.
again, I told you my familial background, right? There was a shared responsibility in my house. I think both of us, my partner and myself, both took step back from working 70, 80 hours for the building of this legacy, this wealth building. It wasn't just a sacrifice on my end. The days when I want to do this, and I tell him to start at 9, he could easily stay to his office till 8:30 because he know I home. But he say, okay, she want to do this. It's a team effort. So I think again, it's all different variations. But I'm just speaking to Wayne's point, which was she she's been told that she can't have it all, um, and that having it all, or she'll have either all of this and some of that. So
you
and
can't
she
have
don't
it
want to lose a
all.
position. So like
Definitely.
I definitely could speak to Wayne's point because I've also seen that where to the
Yeah.
detriment of their husband. The kids don't really like them. They don't the kids just go to daddy for everything. And I mean it happens.
Don't,
So
don't,
But
let me
for
ask the
myself,
question, Mary.
I took a step back.
oh,
Let me
I
ask the
admit I
question to
took a step
Dakota
back.
as well.
oh,
All right. Dakota, you have kids?
I have
Sorry,
one.
Dido, you have one child, right? Okay.
I have
If you
of
had to
course
start,
Kevin, you see my little
if,
right.
right, if you have to start over, right? That extra hour that you could spend at the office, even though you're already killing it, right? Because I'm gonna give it to you. A lot of you ladies now are killing it, right? In the workplace. You have that extra time. You're passionate. You're aggressive. What you're doing, you're killing it. Wouldn't you want to put some of that passion and aggression into your kin as well, to your newborn, to your child, in early stages of their life?
I'll say this, Kev. When I had my daughter, I wasn't where I am now, obviously.
Hmm.
When I had my daughter, I was 26 years old. I actually didn't work for 2 years. I was a stay-at-home mom for 2 years when I had my daughter. She's gonna be 13 in a couple of days. At this, where I am now with my career and running multiple businesses every day, I don't want any more kids, point blank, period. I do not want to mother another child. I do not. And
That's powerful.
I usually say right off the bat to any man that shows any interest in pursuing me, listen, I don't want kids, but I am open to the possibility, maybe. First of all, it have to be my husband because I don't know more baby daddy drama. And we gonna need a nanny because sister girl here gotta work. There was not a lot of time I could give. Like if I leave the office at 5, or the only sacrifice I'm willing to make is I won't stay to the office after 7 if I have a newborn.
So
But
sacrifice, right?
I leaving before 5 to rush home to a newborn baby.
No,
That's what I paying the nanny for.
But I think that was Kev's point all along. Regardless of
Okay.
how much hours they were working before, any
Deviation.
exactly deviation that is less than what they did before is a sacrifice, especially if it's a hardworking, independent, higher earning woman.
That's not a standard. And what
What do you mean that's not a standard?
That's not a standard.
Like I said, I know
is
women who
for
don't
that-
care.
For
Yeah.
that woman in 2022, or I
Mhm.
should say in 2018 and 19, when I was intimately involved in much of that world,
Mhm.
that woman is not making that sacrifice.
Yeah.
Now,
I ain't even-
what
yeah, I-
what
mhm, go
what
ahead, Bill.
Kev's point is now of what he is saying about if you had it to do over again, would you do it? Now, I will be honest. The 45 and up women, when they honest and having a conversation with you, yes, they are talking about what I have wanted to commit more to family during the time when I was pushing. Yes, the ones that are
But-
real with you, they will be honest. But that doesn't have anything to do with the choices of what they are making in that moment.
No,
That was the second point.
I think-
That was the second point, though, Wayne. That was the second point. The
I can
first point is
speak-
that the first point is that like Dito and Mary said, any deviation of what was a part of their original routine is a sacrifice.
No. But wait, though. Wait. Because what
Okay, let me
what you're
just say this
saying, what
too.
you're describing a little bit there, Kev, you're describing something that's not really natural. It's not, because when you try to break it down to where you're breaking it down to now, a man will also do that. Like a man will also
I
take
didn't
off
say
work.
he wouldn't.
I
No,
just
but that's
said
what I'm
that.
saying. So, but then that really becomes a moot point at that point. Because if you're saying that, if you're talking about the sacrifice that any person would make, then it no longer goes towards that maternal instinct. So that's a
Yeah.
whole different.
Hold on.
Okay,
hold on,
and I
Wayne.
can say this too,
Hold on, Wayne.
right?
We're going into something completely different right
So
now. right?
different. Okay, so as a
I'm
woman,
not.
right?
I'm not going into the maternal instinct. I'm.
Uh-huh.
That's not what my point is. And I'm not trying to make the point that a man wouldn't do it either. Because me personally, I would. That's not the point that I am making. The
Yeah,
point
but if
that
you're
I am making.
talking about a small sacrifice that any reasonable person, if you're talking about
Yeah.
a small sacrifice of leaving, because what you're actually trying to say is if you used to leave the office 8:30 and now you leave the office at 8:05, well, at least that's a sacrifice. So what I'm saying is when you're talking about that,
But it's still a
along those-
sacrifice, though.
no,
It's-
but
It
but
depends on if
It's still a sacrifice, though.
Yeah,
If
Okay,
you hold on.
let me
hold on,
say
hold
you
on.
Go
can't
ahead,
say
go
that as
ahead.
an infant. Okay, first of all,
If you
most
say
women,
that you are
women forge through because they don't want to lose themselves. The first thing that happens when you have a child is people don't ask you nothing about you ever again. When they see you, and that's what a career woman, why she's still working them 80 hours, because she want to remind people she is still her and she still can forge through and she can still do this. She can do it all with having a child. That's 8.
That's understandable. I am not disputing any of that.
8:25 to 8:05. It's not a sacrifice
No.
because
I'm
every
not disputing. I'm
infant,
not disputing that. No. What I'm saying
an
is
infant
that
sleep by 7, and then
what
they
I'm
get up
saying
at
is
9.
that if you
11.
leave your office, at 9 o'clock without your kid, you don't have a child. You leave your office at 9 o'clock. because that's a part of your routine. You're grinding, you're being aggressive, you're passionate about your job, right? Then you have a child and you say, you know what? I have a child now. I would like to spend time with my child. I'm not going to leave at 9 o'clock. I'm going to leave at 8:30. I'm going to leave at 8 o'clock, regardless of how minuscule the time difference is. And in your mind, you say, you know what? I want to go home and spend that extra time with my child.
You
That's
wouldn't
Yeah,
even
but
say
and
that. You have
that
to say,
the whole
I have to go to,
context-
I have to leave work because my nanny, because Lakita is put Shay Shay to bed at 8 o'clock. So if you was to leave at 9, you gotta leave at 6:30.
Yeah.
To send and to
That's-
spend any substantial
that's
time.
that's not what I'm talking about though.
But
I'm
see,
not
for
talking
me,
about
though-
the technicalities of it.
Yeah,
That's
but
not
at
what I'm
this
talking
point,
about.
That
at
is
this
that-
point, actually, though, Kev,
You
we
are.
are focused
are.
on only
Yeah.
the
I'm not talking
technicality.
about the nannies or
No,
whatever.
but
you know. I'm
what
talking
I'm
about that
saying
mother
is-
wanting to spend time with that
Yeah,
child.
but see, and that's what the point is. When we started talking about this original point, right? We were talking about the context of women, and when you bring up a woman, you're contextualizing it in contrast to a man in a similar circumstance. That's the only reason for us to be having the conversation. We're not having the conversation in isolation. We're making comparisons, and you're making the comparison between a man being a father and a woman being a mother, and what they would do in those circumstances.
No,
And what
And hold
that,
on,
that was
hold
the
on.
origin
Go-
of the
go in-
conversation.
Go in.
No,
That's-
it was
that-
who
that-
can make more money. That
Hold
was
on.
really.
Hold on.
No,
Going
of
forward
this segment.
to even
Uh.
to address that what you're saying, Wayne. Again, talking about that minuscule amount of the population of women that are hard workers and earners. There are statistics that show that even them take a step back. There are an even smaller minuscule amount of them that, again, won't do that. Like you say, get the nanny. Even the ones who are still taking a small step back, they are getting nannies and stuff like that and getting help along the way. But the ones that don't, those are like diamonds in the rough. Like it's they are so far out there that the percentage of them is extremely minuscule.
No, I would
Right.
definitely. Now, I will say this.
Mhm.
Part of what I've done in my work is
Mhm.
executive coaching, right?
Okay.
I've been in very intimate circumstances with the same
Mhm.
women that we're talking about. So when we're talking about the mentality of what it is that's going on, everything that Mary had started to describe are things that I've heard 100 times as it
I don't want to
relates
lose
to
myself.
all of this thought process about what it is that a woman is considering on all of these things. I have watched women in executive positions work themselves into the hospital, and even in one circumstance, work themselves to death in the situation of what it is you're describing between the balancing of the home and balancing of career. And the fact that the mindset is there to continue with the push and the continuance and of the going and of the drive, irregardless or regardless, if you may, as it relates to the cycle of motherhood.
Is that person, those persons? I'm just being curious, throwing it out there. That those persons in relationships, do they have helpmates, or what was their like home like?
Who are you
Uh,
asking?
I
I think
asked
she
him
asking me. In the majority of circumstances, they were married, and I will say this. This is also how I have actually accumulated a lot of anecdotal data as it relates to the conversation about men, women, and money, because a lot of these executive types are making more than their husbands. And so the challenges within those dynamics as it relates to their roles at work and how they present themselves at work and the person that they have to be at work, and them ultimately not being able to turn that switch when they go home is something that I've also been involved in those conversations from what we would consider like the other side.
Mm-hmm.
well,
Yeah,
like
I
I
know.
was saying, right? I know people, I know women personally that they make a crap ton of money and they had kids, and whatever minor sacrifice they make, they need to make to be with that child, spend extra time with that child, they do that. And I'm not saying that men wouldn't do it either, right? Because
Mhm.
I would. If I spend extra 14 hours in the office, I'd dial back to spend time with my kid, right? And then obviously you're speaking on the people that you have dealt with, right? That this is fine. What I'm saying is that not all women think that way.
No,
Some
of
women
course
would
not.
take that,
Of
would
course
make
not.
that
Of course
sacrifice,
not.
right?
Definitely
And
not.
some men would make that
Man,
sacrifice. And that's all I'm saying.
452.
That in itself
If you send
is
me
my
an
point.
email, you lose. 452. If that
And which
email
is why,
lies,
which is why I asked Mary the question, and I asked Dakota the question. They're two different
because the
females. Mary already said that she
Okay.
stepped back, and Dakota said if she had the chance, she would step back.
now pause here though.
It's
Dakota
make
and
it a
I are two
comparison.
different. We are different.
Dakota
But
actually said that today she would not step back.
step
I
back.
You
won't.
missed
But
that.
Dakota, right? Dakota said Dakota did say she would not step back today. I step
Today,
back
but
like
you said you
today.
wish that you would have given
No.
put a about extra
No,
time
no,
with your
no.
kids.
She
No.
spent 2 years home with her first
No.
child. You
Yeah,
didn't hear that?
I s-
She literally had the perfect at her age. It might not have been perfect for I don't know her situation. I can't speak to it. But if I hadn't taken on this additional project that you know about, Kevin, and I still had my business income, I would have opted to stay home for a longer period of time because I'm older when I'm starting. Like it's also about age difference, too, right? Dakota had a child when you were how old?
26.
I was 35. I was 35 having my first child. So I was a lot more settled as well. So I had savings to sit up home for extra 6 months by choice, not by
But
force. Without
you also career driven though.
I am, but my business would have been passively making money. And if I stay home for 6 months just to enjoy the fact that I own a tail,
Yeah,
but
but
all
Kev, to respond to that point that you're making right there, I'm listening to Mary in what she's saying. This is not career driven. When
no,
you talk and you ascribe career driven woman, this is not what you're
no,
talking
this is
about.
not talking
No.
about.
Because career driven, like we're not staying home, period.
Period.
Like it's
Mary,
not
before
going
you
to happen.
before you're illumined, you wouldn't say that you were career driven.
I would say, but he changed my life.
Okay.
I used to stay to work till 10 o'clock. I had no problem staying back. Even when I was
Okay.
pregnant, I
Yeah,
was
but
still climbing ladders.
Okay.
that's not to say that a person is career driven in their mindset. That talks about what a person is doing in a particular circumstance. So that doesn't have anything to do with how you were driven innately. When you talk about career driven, you talk about a person that has a vision of what it is they need to do, and that is what the
Yes.
mode that they are in, and
Yeah.
that's their natural disposition. So
And you were
whether
describing Mary before she had a kid.
no, but
Literally.
what I'm saying is when you start to ascribe the term of career driven, it's
I'm no
not
longer career driven.
circumstantial. It's not circumstantial. So that's not a person that is career driven. That's a person that's like if you start to look at situations and you're a different person based
She's
on the
flexible.
situation that you in, then
Yeah.
you're flexible.
She's
That
flexible.
that means you could ramp it up and you could ramp it down. A
Yeah.
I
person
have a
that is a
question
career
then.
driven
So,
person drives on that for the entirety of their working
Yeah.
life.
Like I'm not
So,
flexible.
yes.
Like I don't want to be home with a baby. I need to be
I'm flexible.
on that work. I do not
I am
want to be
flexible.
home.
Her circumstances have
With an
changed now that
infant.
she has a little human.
Yeah, but
Let me say
when
this
you
don't
then.
use the
matter.
word when you use the word career driven, I know that what it is that you're saying, but when you use the word, okay, well that's a career driven woman right there, and look, she's doing this. What I'm saying is that is not fair when you start to paint broadly into what the actual universal frame of a career driven woman
Let me
is.
pause you
Because a
there then.
career
Okay,
driven
so
woman
I
is
right
not
here
going
in
to just
another
do that.
meeting, right? I in another meeting, right, with a small company that I recently joined onto, right? In the hopes that so my whole career driven, I wouldn't say I'm not career driven because every day I still think of ways how to enhance who I am and push hard. I just do it along. If I could do it from home, I do it from home because I want to spend time with my family. So I don't think it's flexible. I think I have what I would like before I'd call a work-life balance is what I ascribe to. So every day I try to figure out how to make money without having to physically be there. So I will open up a company that I don't have to be to. I will buy a fixer upper, which I did now, flip that into a duplex, buy a fix it, and then flip it and put the money someplace and let that sit or whatever. So I'm always looking at ways to enhance myself every day, aside from my little human. I just want to spend time with that little human at the same time because I want to cultivate the little asshole. I want to be responsible and culpable for the little asshole I throw back into society. So that's how I see it. Like,
So you're still ambitious and driven towards your goals, regardless of
correct,
you're human, right?
regardless. But for my thing is, like Tito says, if you're gonna be with somebody and you have a child, you need to be culpable because now if I'm not there, who is raising them? If the nanny raising them, okay, so Halkita come from wherever and she teaching them these whatever. I want brainwashing to a point where when I throw them into the world and this little asshole
You
show
couldn't
up
use
to
the word
school.
teach.
These some choice words.
Yeah.
No, I'm telling you, all little children are assholes at some
I
point.
mean, he
It
is
ain't no
gonna
if
watch
and
this later on in life.
no. He can watch it and he can be like, I was a little asshole because right now sometimes he's doing stuff, he's pick up
And
stuff and
I
look
need to
me in
say,
my
"Mommy
eye.
brainwash me."
Right. And that is what parenting is. It's a level of brainwashing because
I don't know about that.
yes,
I
I mean,
Definitely
they
so.
tell
I definitely agree.
it's
I
a
hear you
level,
bugging.
it's a
I
level
think
of brainwashing. Dakota, where you learn to hold the door for people from.
okay. This is what I get it's starting
Okay,
to
so
get.
anyway,
Hold on, no, it's starting to get late, so I gotta let everybody,
Yeah, it's
uh,
10:45.
take this time to make your opinion count. So we will start with you, Mary.
um,
Like
I think
final
that
thoughts.
I
Just say
think
what.
I think the traditional men, the traditional man. I think the modern man has demi-sec, dry, sweet, grigio. Like they like it's a palatable, and it depends on their religious background, the upbringing, socioeconomic circumstances. I think the modern man has definitely evolved with dependencies. So there's no one type of modern man, and there's no one definition you can give to a modern man because it's very. I hate to use this word because they try to say this about gender. It's very fluid. So yeah, that's my thoughts on traditional versus. And my child is not gonna be an asshole. Just want to say that, Emil.
Don't
You're
be
not.
so sure.
I mean, I hope I hope the sacrifices that I'm making and pushing myself late at night, staying up till 2 o'clock, working on business proposals, and still getting up at 6 a.m. to play with him before the nanny reach. I hope it's all worth it. And he is a high functioning, productive member of our society. That's all I want of my son.
Dakota.
I went second last week. We gotta switch it up.
Okay, go Kev.
Love that. Love that
Okay.
energy.
Go Kev.
Because I don't know how this get like the ladies go and then the guys go. You see what I'm saying?
Right?
Because
Sexist.
See, Dakota
You
is not.
guys are sexist.
Because I'm a traditional man. Ladies go first.
Take
Go-
The
that.
door's open.
Go Kev.
Okay, well, I think traditional men are just mirroring what we call traditional women. I mean, sorry, I think modern men are just mirroring what we call modern women now. They just adopting certain attitudes and moving forward. That you could do that, I could do it as well. If you don't have to do this, I don't have to do it either. That sort of thing. In terms of the breadwinner in the household, I honestly don't care who's the breadwinner as long as the support character is actually doing his job and no one is dying. If you get the RPG reference, but other than that, career-driven woman with kids, whatever you do to deviate from your routine without that child is a sacrifice.
Let's go in.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
see. We gotta start a midweek session up for me and Kev or a midterm session, like half hour Saturday mornings. Well, because he ain't letting it go.
No.
No.
Yeah, no, that's good. For me, I think the conversation is one that's an important conversation. I think most of the times you end up in scenarios where we have ended up where there is so much undefined territory, there's so much new territory, and I think when you end up in scenarios like that, you have to refocus on what the goal is, as opposed to following the train of thought of, well, what is and what currently exists and who is what and who, because I think that way you end up lost. And ultimately, if you are getting to the point where you're talking about outcomes, because the reality of what has happened in this, whether we look at 50 years of really staunch feminism, the outcomes of relationships for those women have been negative. They've definitely been in multiples or exponentially, I should say, negative in the Black community. And you could take away from that how you will, how that impact comes about for various factors, whether they be socioeconomic, whether they be targeted factors and social programs that have, taken men out of homes and all of these different factors. But I think that if you start to get back to the point where you talk about what do you ultimately want as an outcome, then you have a point to renegotiate on.
And Dakota.
All right. So for me, I would say in regard to the comparison between traditional men and modern men, I still think even after this conversation, I still think like there are so many defining factors and parameters and character traits that we could go over and over and over. And it would just, it's like, it's from like my mom used to say, from a, don't turn a mountain into a molehill, or is it the other way around? So when you just keep stacking up all of these things, that it becomes different categories and mixed matches of personality, even character traits, like how you were raised. So it's so many different defining factors to determine like what's a traditional man, what he would do versus what he won't do. I don't even think it's possible to even come to that conclusion just based on this short conversation, because it's so much to be said. Um, but definitely to piggyback back onto Kev, from the career-driven woman standpoint and making sacrifices, like, I mean, we then have to determine like what is a sacrifice to you, because I could get to work late every morning and make that sacrifice to stop to Starbucks and don't mind being to the office 30 minutes late. That doesn't mean that I see that as such a sacrifice. Like, I don't see that. To me, stepping back is working 1 day or 2 days a week as opposed to working 5 or 6. Like, for me, it's the extremes of the situation, because I don't think that working 1 less hour a day is a sacrifice for someone like me who don't want to be at home with an infant at all. Like, it's not so much a sacrifice to me, because who cares? Like, it's not that serious. But like, it would be detrimental to my mental health if I have to be home 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week with a baby crying in my head all day. Like, I don't want to do that. The sacrifice in general of mothering a child is not worth me having to put my career and my businesses on the line. Like, I'm not willing or prepared to do that.
That's understandable.
All right. I will go ahead and I will agree with you, Dakota. Traditional versus modern. There are many things that go into it, and it clearly differs based on who's defining it. There's no one clear definition of what either is. I would say that any relationship you get into, I think a lot of people aren't as honest as they should be, and maybe to get around this traditional versus modern, we should all be more honest and lay out what it is we expect in relationships, so that we can foster our own relationship and call it whatever you want, traditional or modern. Uh, so you can foster that relationship and say, hey, these are my non-negotiables. These are things I could maybe compromise on, depending on the level of compromising. And here are some things that, hey, I don't care either way. So I think that
That should be the next topic next week. Prenups.
uh,
We got prenup.
so, but also to answer the question you had asked before, I do think it's possible for a man to be with a woman who makes more than him. I do think that for each individual man, there probably is a number for him that he individually needs to make for him to be okay. And if his for me, if my woman makes more than that number, I'm okay with it. If I only make that number for the rest of my life, that'll be a number that I know I can take care of my family comfortably. So I don't know if that answers your question. And to sign off, the shot of the week will be going with the whole premise of the show, since the thing is here to open up our minds to find truth. I will say a question opens the mind, whereas a statement closes it.
Like that.
Yeah.
I
I
like that.
usually like the shots of the week though.
I like
Good
that.
stuff. Good stuff.
With that,
So prenups then.
Good job, people.
so you said prenup.